Hello and welcome to The Entrepreneurs on Monocle Radio, the show all about inspiring people, innovative companies and fresh ideas in global business. On today's programme, we're reconnecting with two founders of eponymous brands to hear what's new since they last joined us on the show. First, we'll cozy up with some Mongolian cashmere and hear about the country's unique approach to sustainability.
Cashmere products that we design, they're not just products. They're more like an entry point to the country with the rich culture, tradition, mainly represented by our amazing nomads.
Then we'll mark the 10-year anniversary of an Italian luxury menswear brand with some valuable advice for newcomers to the business.
If every week of your life you improve something, a tiny bit, at the end of 10 years you made a serious progress. Those improvements will not look substantial in the short term, but they will compound really nicely.
This is The Entrepreneurs, with me, Tom Edwards. You're listening to The Entrepreneurs. Oyuna Tserendorj is the founder and creative director of Oyuna, a luxury cashmere label designed in London but crafted in Mongolia. After studying clothing engineering in Budapest and later settling here in the British capital, Oyuna felt a strong pull to reconnect with her Mongolian heritage. In 2002, she launched the eponymous brand, creating timeless cashmere pieces for women's and men's apparel, as well as homewares. These beautifully conceived and crafted wares have also appeared as Monocle collaborative pieces made with and for our stores. Today, Oyuna's ethos remains rooted in Mongolia's nomadic culture, sourcing premium cashmere from herders and championing sustainable practices and responsible consumption. Oyuna stopped by Midori House to talk about the importance of that heritage. She began by telling me about the start of the journey.
So having found myself living in London, I wanted to be still very much connected with Mongolia. In general, Mongolians are quite nostalgic, or they're quite patriotic. They love their country. And I love the idea of being connected with my country through something that I love doing, which is designing. And cashmere made total sense because my graduation work was about the cashmere dress, and Mongolia has the best quality cashmere. So in a way, it's being a tiny representative of a country abroad.
Tell me about how the products express that heritage, because I think people can feel it in these beautiful fabrics, of course. But what's the other ways that Mongolian culture, that heritage, how does that manifest itself? Is it about a way it makes you feel? Is it about a look? Is it about something that's intangible? I find it really interesting.
I love the question because I always say cashmere products that we design, they're not just products. They're more like an entry point to the country with the rich culture, tradition. This rich culture and tradition mainly represented by our amazing nomads, who are roughly 35% of the population. Mongolia has a quite a big territory. It's almost the size of the Western Europe, but the population is only 3.2 million people. Basically, it's one person per square kilometer. And the nomads who take care of the land, therefore the cashmere goats that live on the land, they produce this amazing material, gift of nature, and then it's made by amazing craftspeople in factories into a product. I think I would probably say something intangible that comes with the product. It's more than a product. It's definitely more something intangible because it's certain energy that product comes with. So the way to really explain that energy, I would always like to compare to the term terroir in French. And in Mongolian, we have exactly the same word, but in Mongolian, it's called notak. Notak is the land when one is born, where you were born, by this river in this country. And land, the terroir, is the most important thing for Mongolians, where they come from, and they have a deep respect to the land. And the land has an amazing energy, I would say, very ancient energy, untouched by agriculture, or it's not overbuilt by any modern buildings. So you can imagine it's a pristine, beautiful land, and that land gives amazing energy, and anything that comes from the land, I would say, for me, it's completely intangible and it's quite emotional in a way.
It's almost poetic the way you describe it. And it's interesting because we often on this program talk about sustainability, right? And actually, we'll come on to some of the challenges in Mongolia currently, but this was the way to do sustainability before anyone was even talking about it. It's innately sustainable, as you said, because it's so engaged with the land. It's very natural. It's about true subsistence, survival, reuse, repurpose. It's amazing that these practices, these artisans, the nomadic people themselves, they've been living sustainably for more generations than anyone could remember before it was a voguish thing to talk about. That's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's not just Mongolia that used to be like that. Whole world was like that, right? If you think about it, England was like farmers. They were completely sustainable. They would be self-sustained and living with the waking up with the sun, going bed with the sun, candlelight. It's not that different. It's just the time difference between the development of two different worlds. Yeah.
And what about the threats to that? Because you talked about, not over farming or no over industrialization, but we know now climate change obviously wreaks all kinds of havoc. Overgrazing is complicated. I know you're born in Ulaanbaatar, which obviously has troubles with pollution, very grave problems at some times. How big is the problem currently? And are you confident that the problems can be addressed?
I'm confident that problems can definitely be reversed. So every industry and every person has their own responsibility in terms of sustainability, whether we are consumers or makers. So in my case, of course, I'm a consumer and also I'm a maker. I create product, I bring product into this world. And maybe I'll briefly explain the cashmere sustainability, why we're talking about it. So cashmere goats, when they graze, they can take out the grass with the roots, which means when there's too many goats overgrazing, then that land leads to the land desertification. And currently, roughly 3 to 4% of Mongolia's land irreversibly is desertified, which is quite a lot if you think about how big the territory is. And roughly 35%, don't quote me on numbers, but roughly irreversible. And that means there's a lot to do. There is climate change. So roughly 50% of Kashmir's land desertification is caused by climate change and roughly 50% by overgrazing, meaning overproduction of goats driven by commercialization of cashmere around the world.
Big challenges, and obviously we hope they're addressed because they support so many wonderful makers and brands like Oyuna. Tell me a bit about what makes your product stand out. I think, if I may say, part of it is the timelessness, these very beautiful, often quite simple aesthetics, shapes. I don't know, is that fair? How do you, when people say what makes your brand and your products unique, Oyuna, do you think it is that? Is there a timelessness to it?
Probably it's better to ask one of our customers why we feel unique.
Well, what do they say? What do your customers say to you?
Often our customers say how they're amazed by quality, they love the brand story, and they love this, as you said, timeless pieces. But then there's always something different about them, quietly different, which wasn't intent. And I love it when people actually notice that, because I always say, I'd love our customer to quietly stand out for crowd.
Very elegant. And it's interesting, I wanted to ask you a little bit about collaboration. Obviously, Monocle, you have collaborated before on product lines, titans of design, people like John Pawson, for example. And I think someone like John, people would understand the collaboration because there's this interest in elegant minimalism, right? He's a perfect partner. How exciting is it to work with a whole range of different brands, designers, architects, whoever it might be? Does that fire your creative sort of powers, do you think? Is that one of the reasons why you like to work with such an interesting mix of characters?
We haven't done so many collaborations in the history of our brand, which is 22 years, because usually we are the ones who design. but very few times. We did a few collaborations. Of course, we designed for amazing brands under their brand name, but collaboration as such, there's very few and selective, and they're usually collaborations that just come naturally to us, and I just enjoy the process. And Monocle was definitely one of them because there was lots of synergy. I did a small collaboration with Lily Cole because she's an amazingly smart and beautiful human being who's doing a lot for the environment. And John Pawson, as you said, titan of design. For me, it's like so nice that all this hard work our nomads do back in Mongolia, they get reincarnated into one of these John Pawson's vision. It's just absolutely amazing.
You spoke about the material again. And I think any of our listeners, maybe they have their own favourite cashmere piece or something like that. This product is amazing. What is behind the uniqueness of it? Because there's this ability to combine comfort, which is very human and very simple kind of instinct, but then with, I don't know what you call it, elegance, sophistication maybe as well. Do you think that cashmere is uniquely suited to deliver that blend of different things, comfort, elegance, sophistication, warmth? Is it the only material that can do that, do you think?
For me, definitely, yes. The reason cashmere is so amazingly appealing to us humans is it's the softest, the lightest, but the warmest of fibers. And also, I think it's something related to a human desire to be hugged and being warm, or maybe even something related to being in a mother's womb, something that's so primal, right? So someone could probably describe this better on a deeper level than me, but I feel like there's some kind of connection there.
I don't think they could design a product that says it better. And to that point, what are your ambitions on it? Because you mentioned over 2 decades, wonderful, rich heritage of beautiful products. How do you make sense of what comes next? Do you have ambitions about, I don't know, markets that you want to enter, different products that you want to try, places you want to go, maybe somebody you'd love to dress in Oyuna garments? What do your ambitions look like? Because it must be very different, the ambitions, going back to the start of this century when the business began and where you are now. How do you, I don't know, what do your ambitions, what are they like now?
I mean, you mentioned who I would love to dress. I always said I would love to dress Dalai Lama. That would be, for me, it's absolutely amazing. Because in Mongolia, if you go in the countryside, every yurt or ger in Mongolian has a picture of Dalai Lama in the altar. So he's very much respected. That would be an amazing chance for me. But other than that, I think just really making Mongolian cashmere being really precious and not over-commercialized, really increasing the quality of it, because quality can be improved still. And marking Mongolia as a niche boutique supplier of beautiful, soulful cashmere to the world. And whatever I can do to help towards that or inspire other people or designers or consumers, I think that would be my ambition.
A lofty one indeed. Is there ever a tension on that point, Oyuna, about this desire to spread the gospel of Mongolian cashmere, of course, but with this idea that it is so precious, it's so culturally resonant, and the situation is brittle. We know the problems from overgrazing and climate and all the rest of it. Is it ever a tension that you want to tell the world the story, but at the same time, you don't want to tell too many people the story? Is there ever a tension with...
Not really. On contrary, I think I want to tell more of the story so that people have access to right information. And only then people can make their own choices, because we're not here to tell anyone one should do this or not. But providing the right, correct information, I think that's so important.
Let's look briefly to the future. We mentioned 22 years or so and counting. What does that look like? The next few steps? Are you always just excited by the next iteration of the product or the next collection or whatever it might be? Or do you have, I don't know, longer term, have you got an eye on something down the track? Tell me about what you see, or when you look to the future, what are you most excited about?
Somehow it's always comes back to Mongolia. As I said, establishing Mongolia, this amazing high quality boutique, soulful cashmere supplier, and with the beautiful land where people can go and travel and experience this land with no fences, sleep under the stars, 180 degrees, and just making that possible for next generation.
That was Oyuna Tserendorj, the founder of Oyuna, and you can find out more by heading to oyuna.com. You're listening to The Entrepreneurs. Given the changing temperatures in London, we're sticking with the cashmere theme this week. Next up, let's hear from the founder of eponymous Italian menswear label, Luca Faloni. Regular listeners will know Luca is no stranger to Monocle Radio, and I'm delighted to say he stopped by Midori House to celebrate not one but two milestones, the brand's 10th anniversary and its 10th store opening worldwide. Here's Luca in conversation with our own Brenda Toohey.
I grew up in Turin and I spent the first 20 years of my life there. And then I moved to Milan to study. And I left Italy when I was around 21 years old to move to the UK for my master's. And like many people do, I didn't come back to my own country at that point, and I started working abroad. For me, the first part of my life was in consulting. Look, in terms of how it all led to Luca Faloni, I always wanted to start my company. I was always entrepreneurial when I was a kid, but I didn't have a clear idea, and I kept my eyes open. It didn't immediately was an obvious idea, but growing up in Turin, you know where you should buy your products, your clothes at a fair price, at a great quality, the design you want. You literally buy from the same artisan your whole life. And naturally, since given that knowledge that I had of where to buy things in Turin, when I moved to abroad, I bought my clothes always on my trips back to Turin to visit my family. It was more difficult, when I was in London or in San Francisco to find the things that I liked, the price I wanted, etc. But I never thought about it as a business. Now, fast forward 2012, when I was in San Francisco, I was working on a consulting project and I came across the direct-to-consumer brands that they were starting in those days. Essentially, those brands were not selling to a third-party retailer. They would then have their own markup and sell to the customer, but they were skipping that step and selling directly to customers through the internet. And with that result, the customer could pay 1/3 essentially of the price of comparable products. Immediately, I understood that was a great business model, and I said, this is fantastic. Let's apply this to that Italian craftsmanship I'm used to from Turin, and let's make that available to the rest of the world very easily. We launched online, and the first 4 years we were online only. And I always wanted to actually stay online only. That was my initial thought, that was a very efficient channel, etc. But one day, one of our customers, who is a retail agent, came to us and said, I think you have a great product, but you should also try retail, and I can help you. So at the beginning, I was a bit skeptical, but we started with a pop-up, and was a great success. And then we did a little bit bigger pop-up, and I was really impressed that random people would walk by and enter and buy our products. So I was convinced to start our first permanent store. That was about 2018, and today, now we have 10 stores, and we have plans to open many more.
How do you decide what markets to enter, and what are the biggest challenges that you face in your expansion program?
Luckily, being very strong online, and online nowadays is still the majority of our sales, we have good data about where our customers are. And so we try with the retail expansion to follow that presence. And we want to make sure that the people that are already buying from us can have an additional channel to make things easier for them. So, for instance, at the moment, we have a store in Europe and 2 all in America. But the States are about 40% of our online sales. So all the next phase of retail expansion will be North America.
How do you balance your physical retail setup with your online sales? Do you see one as more important than the other?
I think you need to have both. Nowadays, especially, the two channels help each other. First of all, there are some people that either prefer to buy online or retail, and they will not buy the other channel. So if you do only one channel, you miss part of the market. And two, there are the people that like to use the two channels together. Some people go in stores to find the right size and then they buy online. Some people buy online and if it doesn't work, they return in store. Some people like to just see a store to believe we are a real brand, not just an online brand. Some people see the advertising we do online and then they have no intention of buying from us, but then one day randomly they walk in front of a store and then suddenly the brand awareness works really well there. So I believe having two channels together makes you much stronger and it's better for the customer.
What role does customer experience play in your retail strategy? And how do you maintain consistency throughout all of your branches?
Look, customer experience is very important and we want our stores to feel like a home away from home. The last 5 stores we opened have a fairly different model than the first 5 and we put much more capital into that. And not only is the design difference, but we are trying now to have experiences in stores like our Paris stores that we just opened as a floor, which is essentially a members lounge where you also have a pool table. You have a nice lounge area where you can sit and relax, even if you're not buying anything from us. You have a bar where you can get a gin tonic if you want. We do jets in the weekend, sometimes in the peak season. So we try to do things that are not necessarily related to selling items, but just to give a great experience. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, it sounds really cool, I have to say. How does sustainability factor in your plans, both in terms of product sourcing and retail operations?
So sustainability is very important, and naturally as a brand that offer a permanent collection. So first of all, we never throw anything away at the end of the season because all our products are available the next season, and so it doesn't make sense to throw them away, and that's really good. 2, we focus on natural material, so linen, cashmere, and all these eco-friendly materials. And lastly, I would say our garments are made to last, so they're very good quality, so they last longer, which is great for the environment. And also we work in Italy. All our production chain or our supply chain is very well organized. We local artisans, we pay them fairly, and there are great working conditions.
Are all of your products sourced in Italy?
Yes. 100%. So we even write in the label what I think is very important, which is proudly made in Italy. Both the materials and the manufacturing happens in Italy, and I'm very focused on that and to keep it that way, because often too many brands, they say it's made in Italy, but part of the production happens elsewhere, and then the final bits are in Italy, and then you're still calling it in Italy. But no, for us, it's very important to keep it all in the territory, and everything is organized pretty much in the north side of Italy, close to our main production center, which is in Bergamo, in Brescia. And we take textile from many of the regions where I grew up from, and it's all very artisanal and romantic in a way.
Luca, as you celebrate 10 years of Luca Faloni, what are the most significant milestones that stand out for you?
I'm very proud, first of all, of where we arrived, and not many brands or companies in general make it to the 10th year anniversary. Look, the road ahead is still very long. I want to have one day many more stores, and the collection now is fairly developed, but there are categories where we are not strong yet, like outerwear, we just got started, shoes we don't have yet. So I think completing the collection on menswear is an important topic, and giving really easy access to the product globally to all the customers. I can see one day we can have a few hundred stores. And look, at the moment we're only menswear, and I think I'll keep it that way for the near term. However, I believe that even on women's wear, we could do something one day.
Luca, what are some of the most important lessons you've learned over the past 10 years that you might want to pass on to an aspiring entrepreneur?
Yeah, the first one is that it takes time to build a business. Too often people expect nowadays, you start something and in 2 or 3 years you have to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. But I believe the reality of thing is that it takes a long time to really improve the product, to really get the early adopters, improve again the product, learn about the service, improve the service. It really is an infinite process, and it does take time. And so linked to that, the second lesson is continuous micro improvements in every area of the business. I like to, every week, to dedicate at least a certain amount of hours to each department so that department can push forward a little bit. If you every week of your life you improve something a tiny bit, at the end of 10 years you made a serious progress. And again, those improvements will not look substantial in the short term, but they will compound really nicely.
Ultimately, what do you hope the legacy of Luca Faloni will be in the fashion industry?
Look, I want us to become the brand of reference for well-made luxury staples that never go out of fashion. And I want to make sure that customers come to us when they want a product which is well-made, but also at the price point that represent value. So represent quality, but also I don't want to rip the customer off.
And just one last one. Luca, you told me that you now are the proud owner of an 8-week-old puppy. What kind of puppy is that? And will that puppy be swathed in cashmere?
So it's a Maltipoo. It's fantastic. It's very playful. We called him Peekaboo, and he lives by his name. And look, we just bought actually a cashmere coat for the dog, mostly because I wanted to then copy the cashmere coat and add it to our product lines one day. We're actually dog-friendly in the stores. If you go in our store, there is a jar with treats, and it's called the Coco Treats. Coco is the name of my other, the dog of my girlfriend family. And I really like dogs. I think they make you happier, they relax you. We will not have a major dog line, but I can see maybe some tiny coats and maybe some leather leads.
That was Luca Faloni talking to Brenda Toohey, and you can find out more about Luca's label at lucafaloni.com. And that's all for this episode of The Entrepreneurs. We'll be back at the same time next week. Do look out for Eureka, available every Friday. The Entrepreneurs was produced by Laura Kramer with audio editing by Jack Dewars. You can follow us and catch up with the archive at monocle.com or via your preferred podcast platform. If you'd like to contact the team, email Laura on lrk@monocle.com. I'm Tom Edwards. Goodbye, and thanks for listening to The Entrepreneurs.